Snow was falling over Moscow, silent and slow, the kind that blurred edges and swallowed sound. The city glowed dimly beneath the grey sky, muted lights reflected off the Kremlin walls like ghosts trapped in glass. Inside a secluded government compound, Michael sat alone at a grand piano, his fingers resting on the cold ivory keys. He wasn't there to perform. Not yet. He was waiting. A Soviet liaison named Irina Volkov watched him from across the room. Her posture was straight, her expression unreadable. Michael could feel her eyes tracing every move he made. "They say your music moves people," she said softly, her accent sharp as ice. "Here, people don't move without permission." Michael smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time they did." Her lips curved, just slightly, but her eyes never changed. "This isn't America, Mr. Jackson. Be careful which hearts you try to move." Behind her, the heavy oak doors creaked open. General Viktor Karpov, broad-shouldered and severe, entered flanked by 2 guards. "Mr. Jackson," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Welcome to the Union. The world watches this summit. I hope you understand what your presence means." Michael nodded, the reflection of the red star on the Kremlin towers glinting faintly in his eyes. "I didn't come for politics," he said. "I came for music." Victor stepped closer. "Music is politics here." That night, the silence outside was deeper than any applause could fill. Michael's hotel suite overlooked Red Square, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. He sat by the piano again, humming quietly. Each note trembled, suspended like snowflakes before they hit the ground. Irina entered without knocking. She carried a file, stamped with the Soviet emblem, and placed it on the table beside him. "Your itinerary," she said. But when Michael opened it, there was more than schedules inside. Hidden beneath the paper was a small black and white photograph, grainy, old. It showed Michael, years younger, shaking hands with a man who looked vaguely familiar. The man's eyes were circled in ink, and beneath, in Russian, "Find him before they do." Michael looked up. "What is this?" Irina's voice was calm. "Something you were never supposed to see." "Who is he?" She hesitated. "Someone the government wants erased." The piano's soft echo hung in the air. Outside, a siren wailed and faded into nothing. Hours later, Michael walked through the hotel corridors, the photo hidden in his pocket. He passed guards in uniform, journalists whispering in corners, men in grey coats pretending not to watch. The air felt heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. At the end of the hallway, he saw a janitor mopping the floor. The man's eyes flicked up, then down again. But in that fleeting glance, Michael felt something strange. Recognition. He slowed his pace. The janitor's hands trembled slightly on the mop handle. And when he turned away, Michael saw the same scar that ran along the jawline of the man in the photograph. Michael froze. The man spoke without turning. "You shouldn't have come here." His English was perfect. "They think you're just a singer. But you're here for more than that, aren't you?" Michael took a cautious step closer. "Who are you?" The man finally looked at him, his eyes tired but sharp. "A mistake they tried to bury. My name doesn't matter. But yours does. Jackson. They listen to everything you say." Michael's heartbeat quickened. "What do you want from me?" "Not what I want. What they want. You're going to perform tomorrow. Every camera in the world will be on you. When you sing," he paused, glancing toward a surveillance camera above the door, "say the word truth. Just once." Michael frowned. "Why?" "Because it's a key. And once you turn it, you can't turn it back." Before Michael could respond, footsteps echoed down the hall. The man disappeared through a service door, vanishing like a shadow. The next morning, Moscow woke under a sheet of frost. The Soviet-American Peace Summit was set to begin. Leaders from both sides would attend, but the highlight, the symbolic gesture, was Michael's private performance in the Kremlin's Grand Hall. Irina arrived at his suite early. She looked tired, but her composure never cracked. "There's been a change," she said. "You'll perform one song instead of 3. "Why?" She hesitated. "Security reasons." Michael studied her face. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of fear. He nodded. "Okay." As she turned to leave, he asked, "Irina, who's the man in the photograph?" She stopped. "Forget you saw it." "I can't." She faced him again, voice lower now. "Then remember this, some songs aren't meant to be sung." Later that day, Michael stood backstage at the Grand Hall. Through the curtain, he could see the crowd, rows of uniforms, medals, cameras flashing like bursts of lightning. At the front sat Viktor Karpov, expression carved from stone. Beside him, Irina. The stage lights dimmed. A single spotlight cut through the haze, illuminating the piano at center stage. Michael walked toward it slowly, his black shoes gliding over the polished floor. He sat down, placed his fingers on the keys, and for a moment, time stopped. Then, music. Soft, haunting, deliberate. Each note swirled through the hall, rising above politics, above the tension that thickened the air. Faces softened. Eyes glistened. Even Victor's jaw seemed to relax, just slightly. Halfway through, Michael closed his eyes. His voice broke the silence, gentle, trembling, human. And then, as if remembering the stranger's words, he whispered the word truth. The lights flickered. Cameras buzzed. A hum rose through the speakers, low and distorted. Somewhere in the control booth, a red light blinked rapidly. Irina's head snapped toward Victor. He was already on his feet. The sound system cut out completely. The piano fell silent. Michael looked up, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. Guards began to move. But before anyone reached the stage, a projection flickered onto the back wall, a ghostly image of the same man from the photograph, speaking directly into the lens. His voice echoed through the hall. "Truth is not what they tell you. Truth is what you feel." Chaos erupted. Outside, snow fell harder, covering the city in white silence once again. Michael was rushed from the hall, bundled into a black car. Irina sat beside him, her hands shaking slightly as she lit a cigarette. "You weren't supposed to say it," she muttered. "I just sang a word." "You opened a door," she said. "And they don't like open doors." He turned toward her. Who was he? She looked out the window. A voice they silenced. "Until tonight." The car sped through the empty streets. Somewhere behind them, sirens screamed into the cold night. The car stopped in a narrow alley near the Moskva River. The headlights dimmed, and the driver disappeared without a word. Snow swirled around the windshield like restless ghosts. Irina sat perfectly still beside Michael, the red tip of her cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. "They'll search the city," she said. "They'll blame you for what happened." Michael leaned forward, his breath fogging the glass. "Blame me for what?" A word. Irina exhaled smoke that drifted toward him like a veil. "In Moscow, words are weapons. And tonight, you fired one." He turned toward her, his voice low. "That man in the projection, he's alive." Her eyes flicked up, sharp as a blade. No one alive could override a Kremlin feed. "He's a ghost. One of theirs." "One of whose?" "The people who believe truth is more dangerous than bullets." She opened the car door. Cold air flooded in. "Come with me. You'll see." They moved quickly through the frozen streets, cutting down side alleys where even the snow seemed afraid to settle. Irina led him to a rusted metal door behind an abandoned theater. She tapped a coded rhythm. 3 short knocks, 2 long, 1 short. The door opened with a groan. Inside was a staircase descending into darkness. "Where are we going?" Michael asked. Irina didn't answer. Her heels echoed off the concrete as they descended, step by step, until the air grew damp and metallic. The stairs ended in a cavernous room, old subway tunnels long sealed from public use. Dim lanterns lined the walls. In the center stood a group of men and women huddled around a large reel-to-reel recorder. On it, the same symbol Michael had seen on the photograph, a small red star with a slash through it. "This is them," Irina said softly. "The reflection." Michael frowned. "The what?" "They believe every voice leaves an echo. That somewhere in sound, truth can't be erased." A tall man stepped forward. His beard was grey, his eyes bright with defiance. "You brought the singer," he said to Irina. "He brought himself," she replied. The man turned to Michael. "Do you know what you did tonight?" "I sang," Michael said. "You opened every secure frequency in Moscow for 6 seconds. Long enough for us to send a message." Michael blinked. "How?" "Your microphone wasn't just a microphone. It was a transmitter, hidden inside the piano. When you said the trigger word, it activated. Our voice went out on every channel the Kremlin uses to control information." Irina looked away, guilt flickering behind her eyes. Michael's voice hardened. "You used me." The man shrugged. "We needed a messenger the world couldn't ignore." Michael stepped back. "I'm not your weapon." "No," the man said. "You're their mirror. And they can't stand what they see." Later, alone in a corner of the underground room, Michael sat on a wooden crate and stared at the cold concrete floor. Irina approached quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. "I didn't know they'd do this," she said. "Yes, you did." She didn't argue. He sighed. "Who was the man from the photograph?" Her eyes softened. "Victor's brother. Anton Karpov. A composer. A dissident." "The man from the projection?" "Yes. They said he died 10 years ago. But his music, his recordings, they survived. He believed sound could tell the truth even when people couldn't. The reflection movement was built on his work." Michael leaned forward. "And Victor?" "Anton's death was covered up. The government said it was an accident. Victor knew the truth, but he stayed silent. Now he's built an empire on that silence." Michael looked toward the tunnel entrance, where faint daylight bled through a vent. "He'll come for me." Irina nodded. "He already is." That night, gunfire rattled the distant streets. Above ground, Moscow was locking down. Below, the tunnels hummed with hurried whispers. Michael sat with the members of the Reflection as they prepared to flee deeper underground. A young engineer adjusted a portable radio receiver. "They're jamming our signals," he said. "But the broadcast got through. People heard it." "How many?" Irina asked. "Enough." Michael's hands shook as he held the old photograph again. "Why me?" he whispered. The engineer looked up. "Because people listen to you. Because your voice crosses borders theirs never could." A rumble echoed through the tunnels, distant at first, then louder. The lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Trucks," Irina said, her face pale. "They've found us." The group scattered, grabbing equipment and papers. Michael and Irina ran down a narrow passage lined with frozen pipes. The noise grew louder. Boots on metal shouted orders in Russian. "Go left." Irina shouted. They reached a small maintenance door and slipped inside. It led to a forgotten chamber, half flooded, the walls covered in frost. In the center stood an upright piano, warped and ancient, its keys yellowed with time. Michael stared at it, disbelief flickering through exhaustion. "Why is this here?" Irina touched the wood. "Anton used to play here. He called it his sanctuary." Footsteps thundered nearby. Irina drew a pistol from her coat. "They can't take you alive." You're the proof he was right. Michael shook his head. No guns. Michael, I won't die in someone else's song. He moved to the piano and pressed a single key. The sound was cracked but pure. It echoed off the walls, lingered like breath in winter air. Another key. Another note. Soon a melody formed, broken, imperfect, human. Irina lowered the gun. Tears caught the lantern light. What are you doing? Reminding them I'm still me. The soldiers burst in seconds later, weapons raised. Victor entered behind them, his face unreadable. Michael, he said quietly, you shouldn't have come back. Michael didn't stop playing. Neither should you. Victor stepped closer. You don't understand what you've done. My brother's lies died with him. You just dragged them back into the world. Michael looked up. Maybe lies need music to die for real. Victor's jaw tightened. You think your voice changes history? History crushes voices like yours. Maybe, Michael said. But echoes survive. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep in the tunnels, came the sound of hundreds of people singing, a low, haunting chorus. The same melody Michael was playing. Victor froze. His men exchanged uncertain glances. Irina whispered, "They're listening." The soldiers lowered their rifles, confused. The sound grew louder, echoes rebounding through the underground city, spreading like fire in the cold. Victor stared at Michael, then turned and walked away without another word. When dawn came, the tunnels were empty. The reflection had vanished. Irina and Michael stood at the riverbank, their breath visible in the freezing air. "You can't stay," she said. "They'll erase you, too." Michael nodded. "Then I'll leave before they do." She handed him a small cassette tape. Anton's last recording. He made it the night before he died. "If anyone can finish what he started, it's you." He took it gently. "Come with me." Her eyes softened. "My place is here. Someone has to keep the echoes alive." Michael hesitated, then hugged her, a brief, fragile moment that said everything words couldn't. When he stepped back, she was already walking away, disappearing into the fog. Back in his hotel room, Michael packed in silence. The snow outside had turned to rain, streaking the windows like tears. He slipped the cassette into his pocket, grabbed his hat, and looked once more at his reflection in the mirror. For a heartbeat, it didn't move with him. Then it smiled. He froze, breath caught in his throat. The reflection raised a hand, not mirroring his motion, but pointing, to the nightstand, where the photograph of Anton lay beneath the lamp. Michael picked it up. The ink circle around Anton's eyes seemed darker now, like a wound that refused to fade. Beneath the Russian writing, another line had appeared, faint, as if drawn in condensation. The song never ends. The reflection blinked once, and then was normal again. Michael exhaled slowly. "All right," he whispered. "Then neither do I." He left Moscow at sunrise, escorted quietly to the airfield under diplomatic immunity. No cameras, no press, just the hush of engines and falling snow. As the jet lifted from the runway, the city below blurred into white silence. In his hand, the cassette tape felt heavier than it should have. He placed it into a small portable player and pressed play. A hiss of static. Then, faintly, a piano. A melody that sounded eerily familiar. It was his own. The same chords he had played underground. The same phrasing. But this recording was dated 10 years before he was born. Michael's eyes widened. He turned the volume higher. Anton's voice came through, distorted but calm. "If you're hearing this, it means the song found another singer." Then, silence. The tape clicked off. Michael stared out the window. The horizon glowed red beneath the morning sun, like the reflection of a burning star. The private jet touched down in the United States under grey skies and tight-lipped silence. No cameras. No entourage. Just Michael Jackson descending the steps with a cassette tape in his coat pocket and a haunting melody in his head. Waiting for him on the tarmac was an older man in a tan trench coat. His posture was rigid. The kind of man who saluted shadows before confirming who they belonged to. "Mr. Jackson," he said. "Welcome home. I'm Agent Lowell." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You're not a fan, I assume." "I'm here because someone in Washington got a phone call from someone in Moscow who wasn't supposed to be alive." Michael's heart skipped. "Anton." Lowell's eyes narrowed. Whoever it was used his voice. Sent from within the Kremlin. Repeating one message: "The Echo Protocol is awake." They rode in silence to a secure government facility on the outskirts of Washington. Inside a windowless chamber lined with outdated reel machines and CIA relics, Lowell pressed play on a tape identical to Michael's. The voice came through, Anton's again, calm and eerie. "The world listens only when it forgets who's speaking," the voice said. "Which is why this voice is not mine. It's yours." Michael sat frozen. Lowell turned to him. "We decrypted part of it. It's a dead man's switch. If the Soviets ever erased all traces of Anton, this message would activate through radio harmonics, piggybacked on broadcast signals from Moscow. Embedded in your performance." Michael blinked. "You mean, my concerts?" "Yes." Anton hid encoded signals in songs. He knew someday the music would travel farther than the man ever could. Michael stood, pacing. "Why use me?" Lowell looked him in the eye. "Because you were the only sound they couldn't silence." That night, back in his estate, Michael replayed the old cassette in his studio. But this time, he ran it through a vintage synthesizer, letting frequencies stretch and pulse in ways the ear alone couldn't perceive. Suddenly, at 3:17 into the track, the harmonics shifted. A whisper. Then a full voice, buried beneath layers of white noise. "Michael, if you found this, it means I failed." It was Anton. "But if you're hearing it, you still have a chance. They never found my final composition. The one I wrote beneath the Winter Palace. If played fully, it triggers the entire Echo archive. Hundreds of recordings, truths, names, dates. Buried beneath sound." Michael paused the tape, heart pounding. "Where is it?" he whispered. Anton's voice answered as if alive. "You already played the first note. Moscow remembers. But Paris remembers the rest." Within 48 hours, Michael was back in Europe. Disguised beneath a wool cap and oversized sunglasses, he walked the cobblestone alleys of Montmartre. It was raining, soft and continuous, like someone whispering secrets through the city. The address Anton had embedded in the audio belonged to an old music conservatory, long abandoned, its glass doors fogged with time. Inside, sheet music covered the floor like fallen leaves. He moved through the rooms until he reached a faded blackboard. Scribbled across it in Russian was a phrase: "The finale lives in silence." Beneath it, a piano. Old. Dusty. Keys yellowed and warped by moisture. Michael sat down. His hands hovered over the keyboard. Then, slowly, he played the melody Anton had embedded in the Kremlin, the one Victor had tried to erase. A low resonance filled the room. Dust lifted from the walls. The piano keys began to vibrate on their own. The floor beneath him clicked and rose, revealing a trapdoor. Below the conservatory was a hidden room, part archive, part mausoleum. Dozens of tapes labeled only by symbols. Red stars. Black bars. Music notes. He recognized one symbol, a mirrored MJ monogram. Next to it, a single envelope. Inside, a photograph of Anton and Victor. Young. Smiling. Brothers. On the back, in ink, "The only weapon they fear is memory." Suddenly, static buzzed from the room's speaker system. And then, a voice. "Victor. You made it. the voice said. I had hoped you wouldn't. But I knew you would. Michael froze. Victor continued. Do you think I'd let my brother's ghosts go unburied? I found this place long before you. But I let it stay. Because sometimes, bait is more useful than fire. The room shuttered. Michael grabbed 3 tapes and sprinted for the stairwell. Above, the conservatory door burst open. Agents in grey coats filed in. He ran. Out in the streets of Paris, he disappeared into the crowd, ducking into the subway, changing coats with a street performer, hiding in rhythm and anonymity. By the time he reached his hotel, dawn was breaking. He placed the tapes into a digital converter. They were pure music. No speech. No lyrics. Just compositions, sweeping and cinematic, layered with irregular frequency patterns. He uploaded them to a private channel and hit play. Within minutes, servers across the world began detecting unusual data signatures embedded in the songs. The recordings were waking up old signals buried since the Cold War. Names of double agents. Secret experiments. Blacklist codes. The Echo Protocol wasn't just about truth. It was about remembering the lies that built nations. 3 days later, a broadcast aired globally, disguised as a music release. But those who knew, those in power, those in fear, they heard the message. The Echo archive was live. No one could erase it now. Michael stood backstage at a small Paris venue. No cameras. No press. Just silence. Irina stepped out of the shadows. You did it. He nodded. It's not over. No, she said. But now, they can't bury him again. Michael looked down at his gloved hand, the one that had played a revolution. He smiled faintly. Funny, he said. All this from a note. Irina looked at him. What now? He looked past her, to the piano unstage. I play. As he sat, fingers poised, the lights dimmed. The first note echoed. Far away, in cold rooms where decisions were made, alarms triggered. Files unlocked. And the world began listening to itself, for the first time in decades.